All right, picking up now the second part dealing with complex conjugates. So we just got done multiplying them. We went through the patterns of your I. So whenever we have complex numbers that have opposite signs, in front of the imaginary coefficient are called conjugates. What you can do is you can do the same thing with square roots. So if we have a square root in the bottom side of a fraction in the denominator spot, you can even multiply those as well by its conjugate. So if like a plus bi and a minus bi, those are conjugates whenever they multiply together. So like the only thing that's different is just that sign that's in front of the imaginary value, because we don't want to, whenever we multiply, we don't want to have, what's going to happen, we don't want to have an imaginary number left. So all I'm going to do is just going to multiply standard. So I'm going to have 1 times 1, so I'm going to have 1. What will happen is and you can multiply it every time, or I can kind of show you the shortcut here in a second. So 1 times a negative 2i is a negative 2i. 2i times 1 is plus 2i. And then the outsides is going to be negative 4i squared. So right here in the middle, the negative 2i and the positive 2i are going to cancel, essentially, and go away. So I'm going to have 1 minus 4. I squared, remember, is just negative 1. So negative 4 times negative 1 is going to be a 4. Get ahead of myself. So 1 plus 4 is 5. You're accustomed to seeing these as whenever we have a difference of two squares. Okay, you're accustomed to seeing this whenever it was, 4x plus 9 and 4x minus 9. Now, the shortcut to this, whenever we did it before, would have been just to take 4x times 4x and get 16x squared, and have 9 times negative 9 and negative 81. Okay, we didn't have to worry about multiplying the inside because 4x times negative 9 and 4x times positive 9 just went away. Okay, it became negative 36x and positive 36x, so we just eliminated the middle part. Okay, these are conjugates of one another because that whole number is, everything's the same. It's basically like a difference of two squares where everything is exactly the same except for one's positive and one's negative. Okay, so you've seen this before, it's just now we're dealing with it in terms of I. So what's the conjugate of each value? So all we're going to do is just basically rewrite, so 3 and 2i, but instead of it being a minus, it's going to be a plus. Same way with negative 6 and 3i. Everything's the same, but now it's going to be a negative. Okay? Opposite sign of 7i is just going to be negative 7i. Okay? Don't overcomplicate it. Okay? Because what's going to happen is what we're going to do is we're going to do it whenever we divide complex numbers. Because we cannot have a rational or an imaginary number in the denominator spot, because really an imaginary number is just a square root or a radical, which we also can't have in the denominator spot. So we're just going to multiply the top and the bottom by the conjugate, so of whatever the denominator is. So if I have 3 plus I, 11i, over negative 1 minus 2i, all I'm going to do is just multiply the top and the bottom by negative 1 plus 2i. Notice again that, and this is a mistake that I want to keep from happening, we don't change the sign of the negative 1. We keep it as is. Okay, we're just changing how it looks. So whenever we multiply, we're going to multiply everything on top. So when I multiply everything on top, that's just like 3i, or 3 plus 11i times negative 1 plus 2i. So I'm going to multiply the top side, and I'm going to have negative 3 plus 6i minus 11i plus 22i squared. Now if we do the bottom, and if you need to write it out as far as the bottom side is concerned down here, that's fine. If you want to write out every single part and have negative 1 times negative 1, so that's positive 1. You know, if you need to go like this and have minus 2i, and then we already did that part, and then multiply negative 2i times negative 1, so plus 2i, and then negative 2i times positive 2i, so negative 4i squared. So from here, I'm just going to simplify the top, so I can simplify here, and I'm just going to rewrite the top side to where it's negative 3 minus 5i plus 22 times negative 1. Okay, I'm going to work it kind of slow. I'm going to fix the bottom now, and I'm going to simplify those two. They go away. So 1. Okay, the i's go away, and for the most part the i's won't go away on the top side. We only need them to go away on the bottom. Okay, if they're still relevant, or there's still an imaginary number on the top side of my fraction or in the numerator spot, that's completely okay. So then minus 4 times negative 1. So the top side, if I just keep going here, I'm going to have negative 3 minus 5i minus 22. That's just 1 plus 4. Extend that. And then I'm going to have negative 25 minus 5i all over 5. Now, since everything on top is divisible by 5, or I can factor out of 5, I can have 5 and then negative 5 minus I on top, and then the 5 on bottom. The good thing about that is they cancel. So my final answer is just going to be negative 5 minus I. Six is no different, or example 6 is no different from example 5. I cannot have an imaginary number on the bottom, so I need to multiply the top and the bottom both by the conjugate, so 1 minus I, 1 minus I. Okay, so whenever I do that, it's like taking the top side. All I'm going to have 2 times 1, so it's 2. I'm going to have, so I did here, I'm going to go 2 times negative I, so negative 2I. Then negative 7 times 1, so negative 7I. And then negative 7I times negative I is going to be a positive 7I squared. Bottom side, and as you get further along, what's going to happen is hopefully you get to where you can go 1 times 1 and have 1. And then you won't have to do the middle. All you have to do if you have a conjugate of one another is multiply the first part and the last part. So negative I squared. If we combine here on the top, so I'm going to have 2 minus 9I plus 7 times negative 1 all over 1 minus negative 1. Change everything over. So 2 minus 9I minus 7 Two negatives change to a positive, so over 2. And then just combine like terms on the top, so negative 5 minus 9i all over 2. Now, I'm completely okay with you leaving it like that, or if you want to write it as, you may see it as something like this, where it's negative 5 halves minus 9i over 2. Okay, it could look like this or that. It's completely up to you how you do it. I have no real preference, but know that in some cases, especially whenever you see like the ACT or maybe an EOC, something like that, that it could be written like this, especially if one of the two parts can be simplified. They might write, you know, if it would have been a 6 instead of a 5, they might just have negative 3 minus 9i. Okay, but again, it's one of those things. I'm okay with either one. You're probably more likely to see this part, the second part, on like a standardized test, that sort of thing. Assignments in Canvas, you can go from there.